Education Officer, brings us a prayer.
Shall we pray? Almighty God, we thank you for the opportunity to participate in this town hall meeting tonight at the Carapichaima West Secondary School as we continue to engage our stakeholders in this EdU Talk series on the 2023-2027 education policy. We ask your blessings on everyone in attendance here physically, and also all our citizens listening or watching via the live TTT stream, and those on the MOE social media handles. Once again, we ask your special blessing on our Ministers of Education, Dr. Nian Gatsby-Dolly and Lisa Morris-Julian, members of the MOE executive team, and MOE staff, and all other education stakeholders. We express confidence that the contributions from members of the public tonight will further contribute to the fulfillment of the objectives of the Education Policy 2023-2027. Gracious Father, it is our sincere prayer that everything we do will benefit all the students of Trinidad and Tobago. We thank you.
Thank you, Visham. You may have your seats. Dr. the Honorable Nian Gatsby-Dolly, Minister of Education, Dr. Peter Smith, Chief Education Officer, Mr. Aaron Ranratan, Director, School Supervision, Ms. Carol Bagwandin, Director, Early Childhood Care and Education, Dr. Ayinka Nurse Carrington, Manager, Student Support Services Division, other heads of divisions of the Ministry of Education, our moderator for this evening, Mr. Alan Ramdeen, School Supervisor 2, St. Patrick Education District, and other school supervisors, our principal who is hosting us today, Mrs. Nadia Mitchell, Vice Principal, teachers, administrators, parents, students, Ministry of Education staff, education stakeholders, members of the media, those watching us live on TTT and our live stream. Good evening and welcome to the EdU Talk Community Forum. I want to get straight into the program as I invite the welcome remarks to be given by our principal, Ms. Nadia Mitchell. Please welcome her to the lectern.
Good evening. Dr. the Honorable Nian Gatsby-Dolly, Minister of Education, the Honorable Lisa Morris-Julian, Minister in the Ministry of Education, Dr. Peter Smith, Chief Education Officer, Ministry of Education, Mr. Aaron Ramratan, the Director of School Supervision, Ms. Carol Bagwandin, Director of Early Childhood Care and Education, Dr. Ayinka Nurse Carrington, Manager of the Student Support Services Division, other heads of division of the Ministry of Education, our moderator for this evening, Mr. Alan Ramdeen, School Supervisor to St. Patrick Region, and other school supervisors, my Vice Principal, teachers, administrators, parents and students, staff of the Ministry of Education, stakeholders in the education system, all of our viewers on TTT, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good evening once more. It is our pleasure at this school, our honor, and certainly our privilege to host our esteemed minister and her team at our humble school. We do have work assigned that is acceptable, questionable, and not yet begun, but we strive each day to engage in transformational practices that redound to the good of our students, our parents, and our staff. We have ideas and suggestions moving forward so that we may engage our students in ways that will draw out their creativity, self-confidence, and value to our society. We are committed to working with you, ma'am, in making the scholastic development of our young people modern, relevant, of an excellent quality, and equitable for all. I hope and pray that the conversation we began yesterday and continued today may continue in the days, weeks, and months ahead. I end by quoting something our gracious minister mentioned yesterday at the principals' meeting, which struck a chord with me. The question is, what's our way? And to paraphrase Dr. Eric Williams, if I fail, I jeopardize our nation. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you very much, Principal Mitchell. As Principal indicated yesterday, we started the series with all primary and secondary school principals, as well as administrators from ECC and civil managers. We had just under 700 persons with us for very, very, very enlightening conversation, and we know that conversation is expected to continue today. We will start the conversation today by inviting the Honorable Minister, Dr. the Honorable Leanne Gadsby-Dolly, to make her presentation. Please welcome her to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. And it's a pleasure to be here at Carapichaima West, Principal. Thank you for the lovely conversation we had prior to our start. And thank you for being here with us. Today we are here to discuss, or tonight I should say, we're here to discuss the National Education Policy 2023 to 27. And let me say good night. All our protocols have been observed, but let me say good night to all our viewers who are also with us. So, we are introducing a new policy in education, an updated policy in education. And the first thing that we have to consider is what's our why, which is another way of saying, what's our purpose in education? What are we educating for? What are we hoping to achieve? If we go back to the foundation of our nation, just before we became a nation, the then Prime Minister saw it fit to address the young people of our nation at that time. We were a fledgling nation about to say to the world that we wanted to govern ourselves, and we would be able to do this. And what did Dr. Eric Williams say to the young people of our nation at that time? The nation is on the march. There is no turning back. Your responsibility, and he's speaking here to the young people, is a very heavy one. If you fail, you jeopardize our nation. He said to our young people, I have given to the nation as its watchwords discipline, tolerance, and production. They apply to you, the young people. To your tender and loving hands, the future of this nation is entrusted. On your scholastic development, the salvation of the nation is dependent. You carry the future of Trinidad and Tobago in your school bags. And that was the underpinning of why we educate. So what's our why today in 2023? Every one of us, those of us who are here and listening, every one of us involved in the education sector have one goal. And that goal is to ensure the scholastic development of our young people, thereby securing the future of Trinidad. That is the big that all of us should be seeing. Are you hearing me well? Okay. So that's our why. That's our big picture, to ensure that our young people develop scholastically in a broad sense, and therefore the future of our country is assured. Our greatest educational successes will only be achieved if we are all pulling together in the same direction. And I'm using the analogy of, in a tug of war, you have a team that's pulling against you, and you are using your strength to pull in one direction. You work with that team. And if you've ever been in a tug of war, there are directions given, how to put your hands, how to brace your feet, to be able to make the effort to pull together and have the effect that you want, which is the success in the tug of war. It's the same thing we're doing here in our education system. We are pulling against the challenges that we will face. And by doing that together, that's the greatest chance of success that we will have. And on our success will lie the success of the nation. The role of an education policy, it's important. And someone asked me that yesterday, why should we have a policy? Need a policy because it tells us what that vision is. It tells us how we are, what we are, and it tells us what we expect to achieve at the end of that. So the policy is a valuable tool goals for achieving the vision, for achieving the goals, and key indicators of success. So, as we were saying, the education policy is a key tool for us. It establishes the vision, the goals for achieving the vision, the strategies to be used to achieve the goals, and very importantly, the key indicators of our success. And that policy must align with the overarching developmental policy for the nation. They must be in sync, and if they are not, we will have gaps. So if we look to our National Developmental Agenda, which is called Vision 2030, there is a role for education and a vision for education that's established there. Trinidad and Tobago will have a modern, relevant education and training system. And it speaks more about the relevance of that system and how it instills the values, attitudes, and behaviors that are required for our progression as a nation. And so the vision of the Ministry of Education, as espoused in the policy, is aligned to that goal given to us by Vision 2030, which is to provide modern, relevant, quality, equitable education for all. Very short, to the point, because we want it to be internalized. Modern, relevant, quality, equitable education for all. This strategic roadmap, this policy, was developed over the course of 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years, coming from consultations held in 2020 and 2021. In 2020, we came to the country and we said, what do we do about education? How do we change education to suit our changing needs? We received a plethora of information coming in from different sources. In 2021, we refined that information and came back to the public and said, based on what you told us in 2020, these are the directions that we are heading in. And so we refined that, and here we are in 2023 saying, this is the completed version of what started in 2020. This is where we are heading with education. And so we are here now in a conversation with the public that reflects our consultations of 2021 and 2022. 2020 and 2021. So we are covering 8 strategic areas in this policy coming out of our consultations. And these are amendment of the Education Act, human resource development, equity and quality education, curriculum reform, revitalization of TVET, which is technical and vocational education and training, harnessing ICT for digital transformation, and enabling student success. The last one is transitioning learners through the education system. So let's just take a look at what are the goals and the objectives under each of these 8 strategic areas. And of course, we had invited the public to take a look at our website. We do have all of these policies, and I'll come to the sub-policies on our website, so the general public can take a look, can see what we are doing, because the public has to buy in with us to this progression. So amendment of the Education Act, we are looking at amending the legislative framework that governs education in Trinidad and Tobago, because there are some things that were not there originally that now have to be put in. So you will see there the ECCE sector, that's not part of the Education Act, that needs to be included, and some of the updated policies for student truancy and homeschooling and so on. That's a part of that area. Human resource development, very important, because it speaks to how we develop the actual tools of the transformation. The policy is just a policy on paper. The hands and feet of the policy would be everyone involved, from the teachers to the administrators to the back-end staff at the ministry to the staff in the district offices. Everyone has to be on board, and everyone has to have the capacity to do things differently in response to the transformation we expect to see. Because if everyone is not doing that, then the implementation of the policy would not be successful. So human resource development is a critical part of this policy's implementation and our eventual success in transforming education in Trinidad and Tobago. Equity and quality education. This deals with looking at the institutions, our schools, and looking at their preparation to offer quality, modern, relevant, equitable education to all. It deals with the systems in the school, and it takes a look at the assessment that will let us know if the school is offering this type of education to anyone that comes through its gates. Curriculum reform, a very big area, because many persons are passionate about what our children learn. You see, why are we educating our children? Why are we investing 9 to 10% of our annual budget in education? We are doing that because we want to create citizens that will aid our country's development. So we are not just educating so persons can get a CXC certificate. We are educating so that along with that, they will have the right values, attitudes, behaviors, disposition, discipline, tolerance, productivity that will drive our country forward. So curriculum reform is important because it speaks to what happens and what they learn, what experiences they're exposed to. So this is another large area of the policy that speaks to how we inculcate the values, attitudes, behaviors, how we inculcate patriotism in our students, and how that is effected in the granular level at any particular school on any particular school day. So curriculum reform is a large area. It also deals with how we develop those 21st century skills that we say we want our students to have. What do we do as we teach our students, as we have our school days and give them those experiences to develop these things? They will not develop just by us saying it. This section deals with what we actually do in terms of a classroom. Revitalization of TVET, and that's a big area for us. We have, as a country, made significant investment over time in post-secondary TVET organizations. You have YTEP, we have MIC, we have NESC, and so on. And we have also had considerable investment at the school level. But we know that over time, we have had some work to do in terms of upgrading labs, making sure facilities are available, making sure teachers are available, and how that happens in our system. And at this time, there is a need to revitalize TVET in a way that makes students happy to choose TVET as a choice of career. But for them to do that, we have some work to do. And this policy outlines how that work is to be done. What are the strategies to be able to take us from where we are now to where we want to be? How we link with our post-secondary institutions, how we link with the National Training Agency to ensure we have standards across the board for TVET education, how we expose the articulation, and we'll come to that a little more as we look at another pillar. But that's what we're looking at when we speak about revitalization of TVET. Digital transformation, here as a pillar, but cross-cutting in its functionality. COVID would have shown us that we must transform ourselves digitally. Without the ability to do that, we would have been much further behind in the COVID scenario. So this speaks to how we are doing that. And I'm saying how we are doing because even though we are launching this policy in 2023, the national public would know and would have experienced many tenets of the policies that are already in operation. But we are putting it here in the overarching view with the big picture so we see how all the moving parts fit together. And digital transformation is one, because you would have seen laptops already being given to schools. You would have seen the educational technology division of the Ministry of Education already being established. You would have seen us working on the school and management system. Schools would have already had to submit data to populate our school management system, which digitalizes student and teacher records and school data. You would have seen us speak about the IRIS system, our HR system, that we are moving to put teachers' records as digital now, because if we don't do that, we will continue to experience the inefficiencies that we currently are experiencing. So even though we are speaking to this now, and you're seeing the goal and the objectives laid out in this way, this policy, and you will see it mentioned as a sub-policy, a critical sub-policy, has already been in operation, as have quite a number of the initiatives that are now being put together to the public as a big picture. Transition of learners to the education system, a very important issue as we speak to how all of our students understand and take advantage of the educational opportunities that are available in Trinidad and Tobago. So it speaks to how we encourage our children to articulate throughout the system, from ECCE to primary to secondary to post-secondary or tertiary. It speaks to how we present this and how we encourage and how we make the information available, easily available, so that our students can take advantage of these opportunities. Enabling student success. And this now deals with the students themselves, because you recognize, even if you have an institution where persons can succeed, if students have particular issues, they will not be able to maximize on the opportunity. So enabling student success speaks to how we support the learner themselves and how we ensure that each person is able to have a level of success in our education system. So we've spoken about the strategic areas, and under these areas, these 8 strategic areas, you have seen the strategic goals and the strategic objectives. If you have taken a look at the policy that's available on the website, you will see that under each objective, you have policy directions, very granular, very clear. And these policy directions are put there so that you understand how we are moving forward in terms of our strategies. These are the things we are doing to be able to achieve the objectives, which lead back to the goal and to the strategic area. Under the policy directions, we have sub-policy development, and from the sub-policies come the implementation plans and the actual action that takes place on the ground. That sub-policy development is very important because it speaks to some of the smaller areas under the overarching policy. The Ministry of Education is extremely broad, and therefore, if we do not narrow down and hone in on some of the important areas, laying out exactly what should happen, how it should happen, what are the indicators of success, so that we understand what we are doing in every area and we are able to monitor our success or to monitor our lack of success, and then investigate to figure out why we are not succeeding in the way we expected to. This requires policy, policy informed by data. And when we make policies, that is the way that even after I leave office, or the CEO leaves office, or Ms. Bagwandin of ECCE leaves, the culture of the ministry is maintained, and the way things are done is maintained. And even if changes have to be made, they can be made on a more reasoned basis so that the country keeps moving forward, regardless of personalities. So sub-policy development, very important. And there are a few new sub-policies that go along with this Education Policy 2023 to 27, overarching, and then there are the sub-policies that deal with narrower, more specific areas. And these new ones join existing sub-policies, like the Inclusive Education Policy, the National Hair Code would have been one that was just formed, the National School Code of Conduct. So there are a slew of existing sub-policies, and there are a few new ones that have joined. The Cultural Transformation Policy, newest of the lot, the Patriotism Policy, Homeschooling Policy, the Policy for the Registration of Private Schools, Digital Transformation Policy, and the Remedial Education Policy. And as we look at a couple of these very quickly, you would recognize elements that are already in train, already ongoing, because, as I said, this policy is being presented as the overarching policy now. However, elements of this policy that belong to different sub-policies have already been implemented over the time. So the Patriotism sub-policy, the Digital Transformation sub-policy, Remedial Education sub-policy, and the Cultural Transformation through Education sub-policy, these are the ones that will greatly affect the operations of school and the granular details of what happens in a classroom or in a school on any given day, term, or year. So you will just quickly look at the goals of some of these. The Patriotism sub-policy, that is the one that deals with building self-love and nationalism in our students. It's important for our students to be culturally confident, and I'm using that term from the Cultural Policy of Trinidad and Tobago, which was passed a couple of years ago. And the way we can encourage that and inculcate that love for country, we can do that through our education system by putting things not just into our curriculum, how we use local examples, and formalizing that we should do that, but also looking at the activities that happen in a school on any particular day. So simple things like singing the anthem every day, singing national songs. These are things that inspire that confidence. Saying the pledge, which is something that in some schools has fallen away. So it requires now for us to say this must happen so that our students, our teachers, our principals, and those who supervise them within the back end of the ministry understand what should happen to build the self-love, the cultural confidence of our students. The Digital Transformation sub-policy, again, one that's ongoing, and it's directly aligned with the goals and objectives of the strategic area of the policy. We have 13 projects ongoing. I would have mentioned some of them. School learning management system, which deals with the e-classroom system that we are building out. The school management system, which deals with all of your digital records for students and the school. Our IRIS system, which digitalizes our teacher records and so on. All of this is part of the Digital Transformation policy, including the provision of devices to teachers and students and so on. Goals of the Remedial Education sub-policy, yet another sub-policy as a part of the overarching policy that we are acquainted with its operations already, because we have seen the Vacation Revision programs. This is the second year running. We added primary schools this year. We know already that the ministry has identified 106 schools that we are paying particular focus to, and we are paying focus to these areas because they need our support. And as a part of the equity in quality education, and as a part of enabling student success, we have identified schools that need the most support, and we are engaged in giving them that support at this time. So you would have seen this policy in action already, and it really is to pull out the schools that need the most support and give it to them. So they have been assigned school social workers, guidance counselors dedicated to the school, learning support assistants. We have trained the teachers in remedial math, English, and writing, and we have taken this program for a one-year pilot, and it has been extended now for 3 years. So we intend to move along with this program because we know it will benefit our schools, and of course, along the way are all the monitoring factors built in so that we can see our success and make changes where necessary. The cultural transformation through education sub-policy, very important for all of us, again, as part of the curriculum reform thrust. This is where we look at values, attitudes, and behaviors of our students. This is where we look at the activities they are exposed to, and it is intended to be implemented over 2 academic years. So in this academic year, you would have seen, and principals can tell you, that there are some mandatory school activities that have been put into the curriculum. And those activities would be things that it would surprise some people, we have to say, must be mandatory. A career day, a sport day, a school garden. And many schools are doing these things already. However, there are some schools that are not doing these things. And so we have said, let's get all our students experiencing everything so that all of them can be similarly prepared. This is the equity that we are speaking about. And this is why we have put some of those things into our school calendars as mandatory. And there are other things that come with this cultural transformation, because there's a values and character education syllabus for our children that must be pulled into more prominence in our schools, as we consider not only their academic education, but their moral education, their building of values, having ethics, as we consider that sport must be built in, cultural awareness. All of these things go into making the holistically educated student that we want to be the ideal Trinidad and Tobago citizen that will drive our development forward. So if we want to develop this type of citizen, we have to do something differently. If you follow the crime symposium that took place recently in our country, the regional symposium, every prime minister that spoke about the type of citizen we are creating. Why are citizens resorting to violence? What is it that they are not getting? And how we can infuse our education sector to give them these tools and skills. So as a part of our cultural transformation, it is looking at that aspect, looking at the citizen and not just their academic achievements, and ensuring that we are developing the entire citizen. So at the end of it, we get someone that can benefit Trinidad and Tobago in a very superior way in terms of what we are doing now. So that is what this sub-policy speaks to. Indicators of success. What are some of the things that will indicate to us over the years that we are achieving success with our objectives? Increased school performance, and we test school performance using the learning assessments that we do throughout the school, better known as the national test. We have changed the way we are doing this so that it gives us more important data in a faster time, and it gives us a sampling of exactly what's happening across our schools. So increased school performance is one of the ways that we measure success. Increased student performance, and we can get that from SEA results, CSET results, and CAPE results. And we can also know how we're doing in the region, because CXC does that kind of comparison for CSEC and CAPE for us. A decrease in student infractions, even as we seek to change the way our students deal with conflict, and we have a restorative practice pilot happening in 11 schools. Even as we do that, we want to see the effects of that, and we want to see the effects of the curriculum change and the way they have to do different activities in the school. We want to see that effect on our student infractions. We want to see that coming down. A decrease in student attrition, always an issue across the years. We know that some students come into secondary school older. By the time they are 16, which is the age, the end of compulsory education, some of them choose to leave the system. But we want to see that we are engaging them. And when we speak about transition, we want to see that we are engaging them so that they see their career path and they see how they can move forward and stay in the school system. Increasingly positive school climate. School climate is something that we measure. We take information and data from the principals and the students, the parents, and we look at how they are engaged in their school, how they are enjoying their school, their sense of belonging. We want to see that a positive school climate, or there's an increase in the positivity of school climate. Increase in parent, student, and teacher engagement at the schools. Increased job satisfaction for teachers, principals, non-teaching staff. Very important, because if we don't change our systems so that our teachers and principals and non-teaching staff, who are our front end of the ministry, if they are not satisfied, then we will have repercussions lower down on the scale. So we want to ensure that the systems we put in place, that's why the digital transformation, the digitalized teacher files and so on are so important, because it will help us with their job satisfaction. And of course, the wider benefits of an increasingly and more competitively educated society, it will become evident across all of our economic and social sectors, including national security, including crime. So we are encouraging everyone to get involved. Go onto our website. Take a look at the policy. We have written it in a way that makes it easy to understand how we are moving forward. The sub-policies are there as well for your benefit. Take a look at it, read it, be edified, and you can always send us comments on our Facebook page. I think everyone is clear about that, because we get quite a few comments on our Facebook page about different things. So explore it. This is your opportunity to engage with the information. And we want you to engage with us as well. This entire week, we are out speaking about the policies, speaking about the sub-policies, and engaging you so that you will understand what we are doing and buy into it. As parents, citizens, teachers, principals, we want all of our stakeholders to be involved. And stay informed. We are encouraging you to follow the ministry on our Facebook page, our Instagram page, to see what we are doing along the way and to engage with us. Of course, as with everything else, we must face the reality of implementation. This policy is given over years, 2023 to 27. And it is so because it will take time for us to do what is required to be done. Some things have started already, some things are in train, some things are yet to come. So the policy says our intention, it gives our vision, it gives our strategies as we go along the way. And so that is the first thing. Transformation is not an immediate process, and we don't expect it to be. In many cases, it's changing human behavior, and that takes time. So that's the first thing that we have to understand, that this transformation is expected to take place progressively over the course of 5 to 7 years. The other thing is that there are factors that have to go in to be able to get the outcome we expect. So, ongoing professional development for teachers and principals, classroom support, resources for implementation, monitoring, data collection, recording and evaluation, development of professional learning communities so that principals and teachers can support each other, collaboration with parents, stakeholders, all of these things must go into the pot, including continuous infrastructural development of schools. All of these must go into the pot if we are to achieve the transformation. And if there is a lack of any of the inputs, it will affect the outputs, and that must be understood. Above all, the success, again, of our education sector and Trinidad and Tobago, because that's how serious this is, will be a factor of the number of hands that come on deck. Education is everyone's business. Again, everyone should be seeing the big picture, that we are involved in ensuring the scholastic development of our young people to secure the future of Trinidad and Tobago. Our greatest success will be when we pull together in the same direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for that very comprehensive presentation on the Education Policy 2023-2027. I would like to invite the panel on stage. The panel will comprise our Chief Education Officer, Dr. Peter Smith, the Director of School Supervision, Mr. Aaron Ranratan, Ms. Carol Bagwandin, our Director of Early Childhood Care and Education, and Dr. Ayinka Nurse Carrington, Manager, Student Support Services Division. All of these divisions, all the persons represented on the stage, thank you, Minister, they are key to the implementation, they are key to working with all the education stakeholders in the success of the implementation of the education policy. And of course, we will invite our moderator for this afternoon. This is the gentleman who will be fielding your questions. You may have a seat. Who will be fielding your questions? He is Mr. Alan Ramdeen, School Supervisor 2, St. Patrick District. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very aware that you have a lot of issues that you would like to raise. The communications department manages the Facebook page, and I share very often with Minister and all the heads here the issues that we face. One of the things we have done this afternoon to get the issues down on paper for those who don't reach us on our Facebook page is that we have set up a table to the back. So we've had issues related to school transfers, certificates. We know the big one is infrastructure. Ladies and gentlemen, we have provided an opportunity for you to literally write down, and we will take it back for those of you who are not able to get through to the ministry directly to address those issues on a one-on-one basis, whether they are HR issues or otherwise. Mr. Ramdeen is going to be moderating the conversation in and around the education policy. Of course, there are issues that will be aligned to that, but we ask you as much as possible to raise issues, raise questions, raise recommendations based on the presentation that was made this afternoon. And for those who have not gotten the opportunity to go online and read the policy, it is there on the ministry's website, and through corporate communications, we'll be breaking it down over the next couple of weeks on our social media page. So I now hand over to Mr. Alan Ramdeen, who will start the conversation with the panel.
Thank you very much, Ms. Simmons. Good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon to the panel. I'm sure that you're excited because you are here, having read the policy, having heard what the minister had to say. I'm sure you have questions. I'm sure that you have concerns. I'm sure that you want some clarity where it has not been that clear to you. And then, of course, you may want to give your suggestions to the minister and the panel that can inform the policy moving on. But before we get to your questions, I have one question to you, Minister, if you permit me, Honorable Minister. Why now? Why do we need a new education policy at this point in time?
I think COVID-19 introduced into the education landscape, the national landscape, but certainly the education landscape, the imperatives for things to be done differently. And it exposed to us also some of the things that may not have been going so well in our system that need to be confronted and addressed. So this policy comes on the heel of the previous education policy, which would have been up to 2022. However, even in that time, because of COVID-19, things changed quite a bit. So the way we do things has to be adjusted, and our goals now have to be adjusted because our eyes are opened. Before COVID, nobody thought COVID could ever happen. But now we've understood what could happen, and therefore it is important for us to consider our way forward, and the best way to do that would be to revise our policy to ensure that the systems, the strategies, the vision is clear to everyone as we transform.
Right, and I'm glad you're saying that our eyes are now open because, you know, we had guidelines that helped us in the past, and COVID certainly showed us that we need to take a different direction, a different hold on things, and this policy seeks, by the various sub-policies that you have identified, to address a wide range of things that will help us to get where we need to be. Right, thank you. So I would take the first question from anyone, and I'm just again asking you to remain on point and to the topic for this evening. And if you can identify yourself as well when you do. I have a gentleman in the back in the blue.
Pleasant good evening to the Honorable Minister, Nayam Gasbidoli, other officials of MOE, My name is Kenrick Romain, and I represent TT Response, a faith-based organization which is under the leadership of Apostle Dr. Victor Gill. We believe that this new education policy, in accordance with its strategic goal of equity in quality education, is intended primarily to introduce comprehensive sexuality education in our schools. The government is obligated towards this end because it signed off on the following UN agreements: Sustainable Development Goals 2030, International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education, and Sexuality and Reproductive Health and Rights. It is within this context, on behalf of TT Response, that I would like to make a brief statement on comprehensive sexuality education.
Right, so sir, just 1 second. And I'm glad that you say it's a brief statement, because remember we have other persons who would like to ask questions, and I'd want to get to those questions.
Yeah, very brief.
I understand the topic and the significance of it, so can we be as brief as possible?
Yeah, very brief. So I will refer to comprehensive sexuality education as CSE. According to the two documents I mentioned, two of the three agreements I mentioned a little while ago, UN International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education, Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights. CSE is designed to teach children before the age of 5 up to the age of 18 that the following immoral, harmful, sexual behaviors and practices are normal, natural, and acceptable, and that they are based on their human rights. This is what is agreements which our government has signed these agreements.
Right, so can I get to the question itself?
This is a statement I'm making, so I'm going to finish now.
Okay.
All right, so these are the behaviors that CSE teaches children that are normal: same-sex relationships, pornography, pedophilia, prostitution, abortion, promiscuity, fornication, adultery, masturbation, lustful thoughts, oral and anal sex, as well as sex change, drug treatment, and surgery. Multiple studies have shown that these sexual behaviors are detrimental to the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual well-being of children, as well as the welfare of society as a whole. For these reasons, TT Response is proposing the following measures for consideration by MOE. CSE should not be taught in our schools period. MOE should focus greater attention on ensuring our children in all schools are taught through religious instruction classes, fundamental and unchanging truths and principles from the teachings of the Bible about God, marriage, family, gender, sex and sexuality, and moral values. And 3, MOE should completely delegate the responsibility for religious instructions in the schools to faith-based organizations. Thank you.
Right, so sir, what I would ask you to do as well is if you can pass that document to the desk where we have the comments and so on, so it can be go through in more detail and so on. And sir, would you?
I'd like to ask Mr. What was the name, sorry? Mr. Romain? Mr. Romain, have you had a chance to look at the policy? And can you identify in any of the strategic areas or the goals or objectives any area that deals with CSE?
On page 1,
Uh-huh.
pages 1, 2, and 6
Uh-huh.
of the new education policy, it states that one of its key strategic goals is equity and quality education.
Uh-huh.
And this is aligned with UN Sustainable Development Goals 2020.
Uh-huh.
Right? Now,
So, Mr. Romain, you don't think education should be equitable? You don't think everyone should have access to quality education?
well, I'm going according to what is stated in the,
And what is stated is that everyone should have access to quality education,
um,
and that's equity.
that is one part of it. The other part, I am focusing on the UN Sustainable Development Goals 2020. I think there's a section called gender. And in that, under that section, similar with the UN International Guidance on Sexuality Education and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, those agreements which our government signed off on.
So then your issues with the UN Sustainable Goals.
No, the point I'm making is our government signed off on these agreements.
And you don't agree with the UN Sustainable Goals.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm
Well,
saying that our government signed off on these agreements,
Right.
which contain provision
But you
to
don't agree
promote,
with.
to promote
But
and
you don't agree with,
legalize,
right?
to promote and legalize homosexuality in our country.
Which you don't agree with.
No, that is beside the point.
No, Mr. Romain.
I'm talking
okay.
about
Mr. Romain.
what is in these agreements.
Mr. Romain, we speak about equity and quality education. I think I was at pains to explain what that means. And it's very clear in the policy what we are speaking about, ensuring that all schools have what is required for all of our students to succeed in them. That deals with the infrastructure of the schools. It deals with ensuring our teachers are well trained. It deals with ensuring that we have school social workers to assist with social issues, guidance counselors, and so on. It has nothing to do with the comprehensive sexual education. So I just want you to know, I think we have been asked you to give your document across to the desk, and I want you to know, and I'm saying to you, that the equity and quality education deals with our school infrastructure, our teachers, and so on, making sure that our institutions are available to teach our children. So I want to thank you for your contribution and assure you that it does not deal with comprehensive sexuality education.
Just before
Thank
I take
you.
my seat, what I'm
All right,
saying,
Mr.
Mr.
Romain,
Romain, I think
Romain, we need to
thank
give
you.
other persons an opportunity. And again, that particular conversation drives me to the point that the minister is identifying. We really need to read the policy and understand the direction that we are taking. Because there are other things that might have happened, we do not make the assumption that some of that will translate into the education policy right away. So I think the policy needs to be read, understood, and clarity needs to be a great part of us moving on. I think you had your hand up just a half second before, gentlemen, and so I'll give you, and then I'll come to you, sir.
Pleasant good day to the panel. My name is Marlon Anderson. I'm the president of the PTA for Shagona South Secondary School. So I just wanted to ask, you mentioned 106 schools was earmarked to do certain things. If my school is on that list, that is one. And you mentioned about the sports and thing, right? What happened in our school, we have a big field to the back of the school. I've been trying to get the boys and they come to grade down the school, so even self, under the policy, we take up to 2027. My teachers and them we are self-sufficient. Yeah, we are self-sufficient. If we get the ground fixed, we can do our fundraisers and get certain things done in the school and whatnot. So that's why my main issue is that even though you are putting a policy in place, we could be doing things in the school with the children as well.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Shagona South is a part. We have 80 primary schools, 26 secondary schools. Shagona South is one of them. And so what we have done is to address some of the most critical areas first in terms of fixing classrooms, labs, and so on. And it is intended that we will roll out to the other areas, the sporting fields. Those are part of what we are intended to fix, because even as we speak about holistic education, we understand that the schools need access to these fields and so on. I want to commend you as the PTA for doing your part in assisting the school as well. And let me just say that apart from the 106 that we are starting with, because in looking at the categories to choose those schools, we chose those that really needed our attention the most. But it's not the intention to just stick with those. It is to go with those first, and then we roll out to other schools. So if there are other schools that know that they need that level of attention as well, we are coming there, but we have to start somewhere, and we started with those that needed it the most. So.
Right. So before I get to your question, I just want to build on that point and probably discuss it more for the DSS. So we've had the 106 schools, 26 secondary and 80 primary schools over the last year on this program. And based on what the minister is saying, have we seen the level of success based on the investment that we have made into this program, that we can say things are working in the direction as outlined in the education policy?
The general answer to that will be yes, in the context that since we started this and we have selected these schools, we would have had a serious level of monitoring through our district leadership team. What is our district leadership team? The district leadership team, we have them in each educational district, and they comprise of school supervision, school supervisors, our curriculum officers, and officers from our student support services division. That forms a strong collaboration. And together, they would monitor these schools and the successes of these schools. We have seen growth with regards to students' academic improvement. It's not at the level we want them to be as yet, but we have seen the incremental step towards that positive trend. Also with regards to students in discipline. And in supporting all of that would be the level of training and support to both principals and teachers in carrying out the everyday curriculum delivery and the overall management of school operations. So it is that collaboration, that level of support, and we are seeing the fruits bearing, and we continue to build on that based on our new 2023 to 2027 education policy, our remediation program, and even at the primary level, we are also looking at students who would be entering into the secondary school system, to have students who are more equipped and who would be able to manage at the secondary level. So the number of under 30%ers, we would have seen a big improvement from 2022 to 2023, almost reduced by 50%. So we are moving towards that direction, and we are seeing the signs of that level of positive growth.
Right. So I really asked that question to let you know that the initiatives are working. They might not have gotten to the point where you are asking it yet, but we are on that path to get to you eventually the specifics that you are asking for. So that program is working. Right? It's just that we are probably not where you want us to be as yet, but we are getting there. Yes, sir. Anyone at the mic? No, once you indicate, I should be able to see. I don't want you standing up for too long, but go ahead, sir.
Okay. All protocols observed. I must say welcome to you, Minister, south of the Caroni Bridge. I have 8 questions. Would I be allowed to ask those 8 questions?
I don't think I will be able to allow you to ask 8 questions, because that's why we have the desk, and then we want to give everybody an opportunity. So I will ask you probably to prioritize your question. Maybe 2 I can allow, Mr. Would that be okay?
Right.
2.
2 questions, okay. All right, question number 1. Concerning the Montevideo Consensus Agreement, how is the Ministry of Education monitoring and evaluating its implementation to ensure it aligns with the goals of religious communities and respects their values and beliefs?
You want to answer first, or take the second question once?
The Ministry of Education has always had a strong relationship with all of our denominational boards. As you know, we have some public schools that we share with them, the government-assisted schools, and there's been no attempt by the Ministry of Education to subvert or to take over the beliefs of any of the boards or what they do. We support our religions, religious liberty in Trinidad and Tobago.
I was specifically speaking about the Montevideo Consensus Agreement.
Maybe you can give me more specifics about that Montevideo and what exactly you want to ask.
Well, the Montevideo Consensus Agreement was signed in 2013. And in 2015, there was a meeting, there was a reporting where the minister, the then Minister of Community and Development, the Planning, met with members of the IPPF and also the UNFPA. And there has been a group of organizations that has been formed since to monitor and evaluate the progress of countries that would have signed that agreement. 34 countries, including Trinidad and Tobago. That Montevideo Consensus Agreement, when we look at the reporting online, we saw where in relation to the comprehensive sexuality education, which you deny the ministry is about, is already there's 100% framework in place, and 52% of it is in the curriculum.
Mr. Abdullah, I think I've said this to the first contributor. We do not have comprehensive sexuality education as a part
there was
of
a
our
meeting
curriculum.
recently with the Minister of National Security.
Can I finish my answer? I think I've listened. We do not have comprehensive sexuality education on our school's curriculum at this time.
Right, so I think the question...
So I think I've answered and dealt with that.
Let me ask my other question.
Certainly.
Because you didn't answer that first question. In relation to the ACP-EU treaty, what implementation does this treaty have for education policies in Trinidad and Tobago? And how does it align with the ministry's goals and priorities?
Can you elaborate on what specific part of that treaty you are mentioning you want me to speak on?
Specifically with the comprehensive sexuality education again.
I think I've answered that question, Mr.
All right, let me just make a statement here. For all the people who are present in this room, the Ministry of Education has been using very crafty language.
Mr. Abdullah, Mr. Abdullah, I have heard your comments.
But she's not answering my question.
She has answered your question, sir. Mr. Abdullah.
In relation to
Mr. Abdullah,
ACP,
thank you very much. Thank you very
treaty.
much, sir. But I think the minister has not only answered your question, she has said emphatically, you are not satisfied with the answer, sir. No, sir. No, I don't think so, because you are on one track. Mr. Abdullah, again, these are statements that you are making that has no bearing on what we are doing this evening. But sir, she has answered your question. Mr. Abdullah, thank you very much. Can we move on to someone else? Mr. Abdullah, and that's the answer, sir. Mr. Abdullah, can I move on? Mr. Abdullah, you're keeping back everyone else. Is there anyone else who would like to make a contribution, please?
Please.
Ma'am, thank you very much. Sorry. Can I have just one? I know she had her hand up before, and that's why she wanted to form a line. So I wouldn't want to deny, and then I'll come to you. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Hi, good night to everyone on the panel and to everyone listening online and physically. The first slide, Minister, you spoke about the big why, the big picture, and you used the term scholastic development. You then went on later on in your presentation and you spoke under curriculum reform about patriotism, values, under cultural transformation, you spoke about you used the term holistic development. Then, of course, you ended your presentation coming back to the big picture being scholastic development. I personally would like to ask, why did we use scholastic development as the big why, but then inside of the presentation, we keep speaking about, what we want as a citizen, the type of citizen that we want to produce. And we are clear that we want a holistic, a spiritual, a mindful, values, all the different things. So why limit the why, the big picture? Why use the word scholastic? Maybe that is something to consider.
And so scholastic could be explained and understood in the broadest sense. So
well, the definition You know, if we go with the definition, it's academic. It's not holistic.
If I may.
Yes,
You know.
Minister, just one second.
Yeah.
I really want to have a level of decorum.
Yeah.
Right? If the minister is answering the question, I don't expect it to be cut off. If anyone is answering a question up here, I don't expect them to be cut off to give an explanation. Can the minister or the persons up here be allowed to answer the question if you have a comment or something to add afterwards? And that's not just for you, I'm just saying generally. I would really like to have some level of decorum in how we continue. Minister, you can continue.
So as I said, scholastic could be explained and understood in the broader sense. I use the term because that's the term that was used by Dr. Eric Williams at that time. At this time, we understand scholastic to be broader than that. And that's why we bring in the terms holistic, and we bring in the terms, you know, that's kind of to broaden that. So if you don't like the use of the term for the big Y, you can certainly change it to holistic for you. And that's what it's about.
You're asking for my buy-in. You're asking for my consultation. You're asking for my feedback. I've given it to you. And then the response is, if you don't like it, well, just use your own.
No,
that's why we don't attend, because it's disrespectful.
No, ma'am.
You've asked for our feedback. So just note it. Just note the feedback.
So it's noted.
Anyways, we can move on. We can move on, because I am not going to go into that.
If I may, could I just say, I don't think we are here in the spirit of confrontation or argument.
Right. Exactly. So I gave mine, and we can just note it, and we can move on.
Can I finish speak? I allowed you to. We're not here in a spirit of argument or confrontation. I am saying, you asked me why I use the term. I said because it can be used in the broadest term. And if you prefer to use the term holistic, then you're free to do that. But you clearly understand what we are saying, which is that we want our students to be developed in the broadest way, because you were able to draw from all the examples that spoke to that. So I think we're agreed that we understand what we mean.
What I agree with is that we use the wrong term. And if we are in an education forum, 1 + 1 cannot be 3.
Right,
and then you say to me, well, you know 1 + 1, we really mean 2, but I say 3. You would mark that as X.
All right, ma'am.
Right, as I said, moving on. Moving on. I have noted my suggestion. I believe that we can remove the word scholastic and replace it with holistic. You can note it, you can change it, let's move on. Right, next, that's your first slide.
Hold on. Again, I think the minister was very clear. Why are we so confrontational?
Because the minister is not giving us...
We
are not here to be spoken to. We are here to be consulted. So what is the point of a consultation?
It's not a consultation. It's actually a conversation.
That's a conversation, and that's the point.
It's a conversation.
So there's no consultation?
The consultations happened before. That's what we explained.
Okay, so this is not a consultation.
Right, so if you follow the conversation, ma'am.
Yeah.
Right, if you follow the conversation.
So the policy is set in stone.
Hold on.
It's a done
deal. You are
deal.
not allowing us to explain at all, are you? So the minister explained that in 2020, the conversation and the consultation began. And then based on that, was it 2021 or 2021?
2021, we had our second.
A further consultation. And I know, because I had participated in those consultations in 2 capacities, along with the Ministry of Education and one other capacity, where I opposed the ministry because of another position that I held, right? And I saw some of the suggestions that I would have made then come into being into the documents later on. So that there was consultation. We have moved past the consultation phase, and what we are trying to do is to roll this out for persons to understand. Now, I come back to the word that you used. The minister is explaining that we are talking about a holistic, it's still holistic, even though the word might not be used, it is about trying to tap into every aspect of the child's being and ability. So the word scholastic does not sit with you, fine. But I am saying that give it in a suggestion. Who knows, maybe in the final rollout of the document that word might change, because we are hearing what you're saying.
It's not actually in the policy either, so it's a moot point.
Right, so you had a second question I want to get to the young lady across there.
Sure.
The homeschooling policy, I want to discuss that in particular. Who forms the committee that grants the approval? I noticed that you use the word standardize inside of the homeschooling policy. Standardize and homeschool do not go together. And if we go with the definition at 6.1, you start with, it varies from a child being allowed to learn experimentally Then you go on to homeschooling, therefore, is a process whereby a child is engaged in structured learning activities. Again, the first line contradicts the last line. So I think the homeschooling policy needs some revamping, but I would definitely be interested, seeing that this is not a consultation and the policies are now set and we're just being asked to, understand it. Who forms the committee that grants the approval?
CEO, you want to take this one?
Okay, so good evening, everyone. It is a committee that will comprise persons from the various divisions of the Ministry of Education who would look and see what is being recommended. Now, we must bear in mind, if I can just move quickly beyond the committee, between 5 to 16 is compulsory education. And there is a need for us, there is a need for the ministry to monitor to a certain extent what transpires with regard to homeschooling. Currently, if we even have before us now parents who would have embarked upon the exercise and are now asking for their children to be reintroduced into the system. I'm equally passionate like you, if you want, because I also practice homeschooling up to the level of university. So I know about the pros and the cons, and it's an area that we really need to approach with a certain level of sensitivity, because in trying to help our students, our children, we can also harm the educative process.
Homeschooling in Trinidad and Tobago has been going on for the past 40 plus years. And we have never had a policy that talks about subjecting ourselves to standardized testing and whatnot and whatnot. Does the Education Act, is the Constitution, are we planning to change any of this for this policy? Because I can state categorically this is against the Constitution.
In fact, in the Education Act, it does make mention of homeschooling, given the prerogative to the Minister of Education to ensure that that is carried out properly.
Right, so I just want to add something here. Homeschooling, of course, increased dramatically during the COVID period. And there needed to be a policy to guide how we do homeschooling overall. That's what Dr. Smith is talking about. So that there are guidelines now that help us to understand what is expected. Of course, I think this goes to the entire education policy. I know some people are under the impression it's cast in stone. But as the policy is ruled out, Minister, I'm asking you this, as the policy is ruled out, we will discover certain things.
And that's why it's a conversation at this time, because the consultative process gave rise to the policy. Now we are bringing the policy to the public saying, this is what arose from it. This is what we are doing. That conversation does not exclude persons having recommendations about things that we may need to look at again. However, it is not a consultation because we have a finished product that is now being presented to the public.
And as this product is ruled out,
so is it law? Is it law or is it not? So for example, I've been homeschooling my child. She's nearly 14 years old. Since she's 5 years old, I do not intend to send any letter to the Ministry of Education to tell them that I am homeschooling. I do not intend to be subjected to any standardized test or any of it. So I want to know, am I breaking the law or is it a guideline? What is it?
This policy that we are discussing now is the policy for homeschooling. The amendment to the Education Act will deal with those types of considerations about penalties and any amendments to the penalties and so on. So we haven't gotten to that stage yet. We are still dealing with introducing a policy. And it's not meant to be a big stick. It's not meant to just go from 0 to 100. It's meant to say, we have to now look at how we do this because more parents are doing it and some may not be doing it in accordance with their child's best interest. And therefore, this is how we want to proceed. And so that's why we are saying to the country, this is what we want to do. And as we move along, we are moving persons along with behavior change. And that's why it's
Who determines best interest and behavior change?
If I may. And that's why it's not a big stick approach. It's saying, this is where you want to get. As happens in any other country, we looked at different models of homeschooling policies in different countries, how it's done. and therefore we are moving towards that. And as persons need the support to move there, we are moving there with them. It's not meant to be a punitive and we'll lock you up because they're doing this or you're not doing this. That's not the approach we're taking.
Right, so I admire the passion. You really do have some deep-seated concerns, and I want to ask you to make use of that desk in the back there, write them down, and let's...
Oh, no need. A lawyer would write it down.
Well, whoever.
As I said, it's unconstitutional. And I'm
Right, good,
saying
good.
it
Thank
big
you very
and bold.
much.
There will be no letter.
Could you identify yourself? And just...
Hi, good evening. My name is Janice Scott. And first and foremost, I'd like to say special thanks to the panel headed by Dr. the Honorable Nian Gatsby-Dolly, the Honorable Lisa Morris-Julian, the CEO, and members of the panel. First, I would just like to clarify something. I mean, my understanding, as well as the globally accepted definition of scholastic means of or concerning schools and education. So, I mean, it really and truly speaks to the holistic development of our children. It means the holistic direction that the governments often subscribe to. So, I mean, all of the arguments are just semantics at this point. It's nitpicking and something that really doesn't have to be nitpicked about. Secondly, well, my question is, some students have a challenge in terms of coping with the realities that they tend to face. So I'd like to know, how does this policy tend to address those issues for students who have that particular concern?
Right, so can I? Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. Our students are you all hearing me? Our students are in our transformative stages, and to support our national education policy, the Ministry of Education have embarked on supporting the Student Support Services Division with guidance counselors who are poised to the developmental and preventive aspects of our students' growth and development. Our school social workers are there to support the emotional elements in development, where they would go a little deeper into their psychosocial development, facing those realities that right now. We also have our EdU unit. Let's take a break for technology.
Let me just...
Thank you very much. Hello? You all are hearing? Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Good. So we also have our psychologists who are there to support those deep-seated needs of our students. So we understand that our students face multiple realities. And the Student Support Services Division with its staff are there to continue that support, to help our students go through the different experiences as they journey through their educational life. So we are preparing our students holistically, and we do it in a transformative manner, and also in the manner of empowerment and helping them to understand the realities of today.
Right.
Thank you very much.
So, Vanessa, I have another question for you before I take someone from the audience again. Cultural transformation, big term. Right? I have heard you introduce it, but can you give us an explanation as to why we need to have cultural transformation across our schools?
I think what the underpinning of the cultural transformation is really looking at value education. A lot of times we focus on the academic, and once our children are doing well in school and bringing home good grades, sometimes that's enough for parents. However, we have to consider, one, why it is so easy for our citizens to resort to crime and criminality. We have a lot of corruption, a high corruption rate. These kinds of things are not only with politicians. If you go down our public sector, even into the private sector, you would hear people speaking about experiences with workers across the board where they are not getting a full day's work for a full day's pay. other things where we look at the professionalism, the productivity of our society. These are things that are now affecting us severely and affecting the progress of the country. So cultural transformation speaks to how we develop the whole person, and we take a close look at how our students and how our citizens, our young citizens, are developing that aspect of their personality and of their professionalism. So that is what that cultural transformation is. How do we change the culture of our country through education? How do we use the education sector to help our students inculcate some of those values? Some of these things were learned at home, at school, and we recognize that for some children, this is no longer possible. Dr. Nurse Carrington said it. For some children, their realities are different. So we have to now embed it in a more substantial way, a measurable way into our school system.
You have me thinking about bring back the old time days.
That's some of it, because sometimes along the way we lost some of those old time habits, and it was to the detriment of other things. So sometimes as parents, we want to make life so easy for our children that we lose sight of the fact that some of the hardships we went through built us in certain ways. So now we have to build in some of those experiences into the school life. So those same skills and characteristics and traits, they are developed. We had bigger families. Just take a simple example. There were bigger families long ago. Now it's not uncommon to see a child from a single child family or maybe just 2 children. So some children have lost the ability to deal with other people and to work as part of a team. But it's a life skill that's required. So even in our primary, secondary, and ECCE schools, we need to build in those kinds of experiences, how we do things, so they build those skills. So that's what the cultural transformation is all about. Yes, bring back the old time days to some extent.
Thank you very much for that. Sir, you had a question. Someone with the mic?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul Ram Logan. I'm a teacher in this school. I have a couple points, but for the CEO, part of the policy speaks about human resource equipping teachers with the required requisite skills and knowledge required to perform their duties. Myself and many UTT graduates missed that bridging program. And that means that I would be stuck at a T1 until I can be able to access the bridging program to be moved up to a T3. So I'm a T1 acting as an HOD in my department in this school. So I'm asking that if it could be made available to us, UTT graduates, to at least access that program again. In this school, this year, we had 184 students that came out of the primary school system. Out of that 184, 99 scored under 30%. I have a class I'm teaching, and I used to teach primary school before I entered secondary school. I have a class I'm teaching in Form 1 that at this point is at standard 3 level. So my concern, Mr. CEO, is that what is being done in the primary school that a child is staying 7 years in a school and coming out and can't read? What am I to work with? What are we in the secondary school to work with? So they are frustrated. And therefore what happens? They distract the entire learning process for those who are there to learn. We have we have many problems. I hope that the Honorable Minister will visit this school. One question to the Honorable Minister. We speak about equity in the conversation, in the policy. I'm pretty much new into this school, but there is a big building across there that I believe started to be built in 2000. I understand it was probably finished in 2006. I grieve over it. Many of us grieve over it. A huge complex that is a secondary school Is it possible to get an update as to the status of that school, Mr. Minister?
So can I ask
Thank you.
CEO to answer, first of all, the other parts, and then I think he might be able to answer that last part as well.
Okay. So thank you very much for the question and the concerns raised. The Ministry of Education is aware of the challenges in terms of the literacy and numeracy levels of students who exit the primary school and enter the secondary school. And that would have made it a little more difficult, or much more difficult, with COVID. Hence, as part of our response, you would have seen last year, whereby we made available to those students, in fact, not just 30%, but we went as high as 50% and targeted those 9,000 students and indicated we are willing to provide that additional instruction for you during the vacation, and we did so. For this year, we also extended it again to the secondary school level, but we are going to the source of some of those problems. And so we have gone to the primary school, whereby we have extended that same vacation revision program at the primary level, and even more than that, we have also introduced the whole concept of that after-school class, so as to give our students that additional time in those key areas, that numeracy as well as literacy. You would recall a few years ago we had what we refer to as the national test. We would have run our pilot this year, where we would have targeted students at the primary level. We have the results from that, but it's not just simply results in the math and the language. Let me explain carefully. We also captured information pertaining to certain background factors, so that when we looked at performance, we can now link the performance to other factors. The aim basically is to identify those factors and treat with those factors. So for instance, Dr. Nurse Carrington would have mentioned the school social workers. What we do realize is that sometimes the challenges that teachers face, as you recall, sir, are beyond you. Sometimes we need to engage our parents, and hence the importance of the school social workers. To really engage, I said, parents, the importance of the guidance counselors, who will provide additional support to our students. So the approach is multi-pronged. We are saying more time in those key areas in numeracy and literacy. We are saying those psychosocial development areas, we also need to deal with it. The social and emotional aspect, we also need to deal with it. So it's a really multi-pronged approach that we have launched, and as Minister indicated, we have leeway now to continue that program for the next few years. Already, we have seen the benefits. We have seen the reduction in the discipline and infraction. We have seen an improvement, even in the SC. We have seen an improvement in CSEC also. In fact, when you look at the data, I'm seeing for the first time probably in 6 or 7 years, when we look at the 26 schools, we are seeing more students writing CSEC than we would have seen in the past few years. So things have been put in place. The changes are coming incrementally, but they are coming. They are coming.
I did ask that question of Ms. Ramratan. How has that 106 schools benefited? And one of the things that I found very interesting that he said is that at least the 30%ers have been reduced by almost 50%. So it means then that there has been a level of success in just 1 year.
Yeah.
But as we read the policy, the whole idea of tackling some of these issues at the root level from as early as preschool is being rolled out as well. You had a second question. I don't really see whoever answered about the school.
You asked about the school
Right,
that
yeah.
was built, and let's take a look at that.
Oh, right. The first
Those
part, yes.
two issues we'll have to take a look at. I would have to see the specific issue with the school. It was finished in 2006, you said? No, it was one of the schools that was started later on. No, it couldn't be 2006.
around 2008 or 9.
Yeah.
That is 2000, around 2010.
Yeah.
Around.
So what we can do?
We have quite, let me just say this, we have quite a few schools that some of them at advanced stages of completion at that time that require a large amount of funding to be completed. Many of them, that program, to start an ambitious school building program like that, would require at least $4 billion in dedicated funding. That was not available at the time it started. So what has been happening is that we have been finishing them in batches. So we have finished one batch of 13, we are on to another batch of 7 right now. Each batch takes about 400 million to finish. So when we are finished with this second batch, we will move on to another batch. And that is how we are finishing out the schools that were started. So many people may see schools and they say, school is finished and why is it not opened? It is not finished. Yeah. There are many things to be done. A school may look finished on the outside, but there's still a lot of work to be done on the inside, electricals, there's furniture, there's outfitting, and that takes, as a matter of fact, the bulk of the money. So we are working in tranches to finish off the schools. And I just want to say that, so we're going to look into the bridging, because that has been an issue for some time with some teachers. And I just want to say, to join with CEO, what you described there, sir, is our current true situation in too many schools. And we are not running from it. This policy confronts our reality. This is what we are facing. And that is why that remedial education sub-policy that CEO was speaking to, that is why that is so important. So it deals with the social aspect. It deals with training of teachers in remedial writing and so on. It also speaks to the change of the primary school leaving program and us insisting in Form 1 and 2 that in these schools, we bring our students up to that level of literacy so that they have at least that. Because we also realize that the attrition is a spin-off of the frustration, and we want to keep them there. So just saying with you, that's exactly what we are doing to face that reality.
Thank you, Minister. Just one question again before I take one from the crowd. Of course, it's a burning question throughout the country. Everybody is concerned about crime. And in our schools, we would have noted the level of violence and so on that are coming out of our schools. How does this education policy treat with that aspect?
Again, as part of the remedial education policy, sub-policy, we have started the restorative practices in 11 schools. It's a pilot, 11 of those 26 schools. It's a pilot because we want to increase it. So we have now brought on some staff that will be in those schools, helping our students to deal with conflict differently. And that is, we are giving them tools. Some of them, based on their background, based on some of the things they've experienced in life, they can't process conflict in a positive way. And it leads to what we see. So we have started that in 11 schools, and maybe Dr. Nurse Carrington can give us a little more insight into that.
So over from May to about July of this year, we trained over 400 persons in restorative practices. And we trained from the principal, our school supervisors, our teachers, guidance counselors, school social workers, our diagnostic specialists. We even trained our school safety officers and our students, 110 students who also trained. And in restorative practices is a concept that we are going to use. It's life-changing. It's about changing your life. It's about changing your thinking. It's transformative. It deals with empowerment. It deals with building of confidence in our students, repairing harm in our schools. We feel the frustration in the schools, in the classes. If the student is frustrated, they are unable to assimilate the education that is being taught to them in the classroom. So we are helping them to deal with their emotions. We are helping them to understand and how to manage conflict. We are helping them to understand accountability. We are teaching them the fair process. And we do this through something called the restorative circles, where students are able to voice their concerns, to voice how they feel. We teach them to use I messages. We try to use things like positive affirmations with our students. Our teachers are also given that opportunity to speak in a restorative manner, the use of restorative language. Our students were trained in peer mediation, so they are part of that fair process. It's a very transformative concept. It is used widely in the criminal justice system as restorative justice, but under the school system, it's called restorative practices, and it's about building community. And the school is part of that community. All students are part of that community, and it teaches us to accept responsibility. So when you suspend a child, they're happy to go home, they get suspended. But under the restorative model, they understand my action, who did it hurt? It hurt my mother. Yes, I fought, but my mother now is feeling bad. My father is feeling bad. My classmates are feeling bad. So it makes them reflect, and the reflective process is very important because some students, they don't get time to reflect when they get into an infraction. It's only after we get them to sit down and say, what were you thinking when you did that? And what we recognize is that students are now talking and we are listening.
After this initial phase, I'm sure many schools are just waiting for this to be rolled out in their schools as well, because a very positive way of treating with matters and so on. I think you had a question, sir?
There's somebody in the back. There's somebody in the back.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead.
Pleasant night, Madam Minister, panel, fellow participants. I am Jarada Singh, Vice President of the PTA of this school. I happen to be father of 2 schools. I must commend the policy that you have developed and still in the development stage. I have one question relative to that building that we speak of. Is that building on the next phase of your rollout of schools? Because as far as I understand, that building is there 17 years. There are people who are parents of this school who were students whilst it was built and prior to. That, Madam Minister, is not nice for our children who are sitting here as children, hear the mother saying and the father saying, I know when that was building. I'm a grandfather as well. And I know when that was building, I was police. So, Madam Minister, before I go on to my other summary, I want to ask, is this school building part of that program to be handed over in the near future? Because we as a PTA has committed ourselves to make it happen. We would like our present Form 5 to be graduated at that facilities, ma'am. Could you shed light?
We've just started the 2nd phase, and so we have not contemplated the schools in the 3rd phase yet. So I can't say to you that that is in the next phase, but I can say to you that we will take a look at what's happening there and how quickly we can address it.
Thank you for that, but can I ask what were the priorities used in choosing those schools to be on the different phases?
Right. So
there are quite a lot of them. I think more than we can go through.
Right, and not only that, that is not on the topic. I understand your concern being in the school.
But
But
we
could
would
we
like
get
to have follow-up on it, please, ma'am.
I will.
Assiduous follow-up. Thank you. Coming to the policy, ma'am, you mentioned about training personnel, teachers, the support staff, etc., to be dealing with your children, our children, in terms of their discipline, their indisciplines, developing sporting disciplines as well. My comrade from the Chaguanas South raised the topic about access to grounds. This school has no home ground. We don't even have a ground. We borrowed the one from the village down the road. And alongside that, they have to be transporting and digging in pockets, raising funds to transport the children to practice and to go play games. And ma'am, I think they need that support because this school has achieved success in the sporting arena. Cricket, football, you name it, the girls as well. And it tells us that sport is an integral part of the learning process of our children. Not only has it been done in the past in my time, it has waned in the present, and I would like to see it go forward in the future. Please. Also, you mentioned about dealing with the children and their indisciplines and recognizing the social ills and the whatever that is hindering children from achieving their best. Teachers come out of the educational institutes as teachers. I have 2 daughter teachers, I know. And when those children, those teachers encounter children who are out of the, as we would want to say, the less fortunate homes, those children, some of them lash out violently. Some of them, they do the turtle effect, they crawl into their shells. There are even children who, they just go about their day to day. Mommy sent me to school, so I'm going. And what they come out with is 0. And that is not nice for our future generation. If we as a country has our best interests at heart, we would train some of these teachers, if not a vast number of them, and get parents on board as well who are willing to give of their time, their energies to assist these teachers. In this school, last November, the PTA was duly elected. We formed a parent support committee. That committee was to deal with the indiscipline and violence at this school. We started with it outside the walls.
Yeah, I know, really.
We were lobbying to get into the school compound to help the teachers police the schools and level the playing field where indiscipline is concerned. We were hindered in doing so, ma'am. I would have the NPTA address that with you, ma'am. I would not voice it at this time. It is not on the policy.
Right, so I'm running out of time, and I want to take the other gentleman's question. I'll give the minister.
Let me just respond to what you said about the social issues, and you're very correct. What you're presenting, again, is the reality of the situation in some of our schools. And that is why, as a part of the remedial education sub-policy, not only are we looking at the academics, but we understand that there are so many social issues that we have assigned to these schools. They're dedicated school social worker and guidance counselor. Some schools can share, but we recognize that these schools cannot. We've also introduced the learning support assistants. I think this school has about 3, and they are to add additional support to the school in these areas. So we understand, you're quite correct, and we understand that if we did not do something about that, then it would affect the other things that we are trying to get, the other outcomes. So you're very correct in that, and we are moving along that pathway, which is why we have included those aspects in the program. So I understand what you're saying, and we are moving there.
What does the ministry have in place relative to the harmonizing of teachers and parents working along with the students to bring out a fully well-developed individual from our school?
I think all schools, all principals welcome their PTAs, their alumni associations. These are important networks. And if we look at the most, if you want to put in quote-unquote successful schools that persons look to and say they are successful, we see that network of support. So I don't think it is something that any principal would not want to encourage. And of course, there are dynamics around those relationships and so on. However, it's something that benefits a school when you have that system of support, that network of support in our schools. Thank you, sir. I think we have to move to somebody else.
I beg you to initiate that with your principals across our country, please.
Right.
There are some lacking in that area.
Right. I just have time. I'm getting all sorts of signals all over the place to wrap up, but I know you had a question, so I'll take you as the last question.
Well, I know you're taking mine as the last question, but I have.
So don't be too difficult there, please.
Yeah, well, I'm not a difficult guy. First, I want to say good night to the Minister of Education and her panel, the CEO, the Minister in the Ministry of Education, and most importantly, our NPTA President, Mr. Kevin David. You know, we are all here, and we are all here as one family tonight. And let me just say something. My name is Clarence Mendoza. Those of you who know me or those of you who don't know me, Mendoza.
Okay.
Right? I was the former advisor to the Minister of Education 2018, 2017, coming up there, Mr. Garcia, in the TVET structure. So I'm dealing with TVET. I love what I heard tonight. I went through the document, but TVET is my thing. And I'm saying, the reason I'm saying TVET is because all along we have been asking for our secondary schools, those with the 30%ers, to have some type of help for those children. And we are saying tonight, I am saying tonight, that we should look at Form 2 on up. That doesn't mean you have to go in as Form 2 and start to do any welding or electrical fundamentals. But the basics must be taught to them. We have our children dropping out of school from Form 2 and 3. They're not even making it to 4. They are dropouts. And we would have seen what would have taken place during COVID. A lot of dropout. We're not going to get into that tonight. Okay? I want to say again, coming out of what we are hearing here tonight, it's a conversation, and I love what you, Minister, has brought to this community. Although it's empty, it's worthwhile.
We have those viewing online. So.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. They're viewing online, but what I'm saying is worthwhile you coming out in the communities and having this conversation.
I agree.
You see? Because a lot of parents will miss out. Some may watch it later on and say, oh, I should have gone there. But I applaud you for that, and I think it's something that you should do more. You should take it to St. Patrick's, take it to Victoria. It doesn't have to be now. Have that conversation with your community and know what's happening within the school system. So this is why I'm saying this tonight, because we have an issue with principals. And if we don't speak about it, nobody will speak about it. There are too many acting principals who cannot get their feet wet. And I'm being real. And in the document, we'll see where we are going to upscale our principals. They need to know. They are collecting a vote from the Ministry of Education and don't know what to do with it. I'm being real. I'm the treasurer of Pleasantville Secondary School, former vice president of the NPTA, and the chairman of the Concerned Parents Movement. So we must be real in what we are saying and what we are doing. We can prepare this document, and today we can call it a new document, but I'm calling it an advancement of the old document. So come 2027, you will continue this journey and add to it and tweak whatever has to be tweaked to make it better. Now coming to Miss Carrington. Right. I'm dealing with your side of the job now. Your side of the job, and I'm saying your side of the job because we are speaking of indiscipline within our schools. Our students are rampant. We are not here to discuss, we are having a conversation again, and I'm saying indiscipline is running our teachers rampant. They have headaches. Our acting principals, they don't know what to do. Parents are not taking their necessary responsibility within that framework. And we must be real as parents. We must understand that we have a part to play. I'm a parent. I have a daughter in school also. We must have that part to play. But what I'm saying, coming out of that document, and we are talking policies, where I'm not hearing anything about policy for those children who are being suspended. Now, if you are in the school and if you are speaking with the students and you know how they are living their life, the 6th and 7th and 5 and whatever gangs, they want to be suspended. They are telling you, they are coming to school prepared to be suspended. They are coming to school prepared for you to be suspended who don't want to be suspended. And we have put the necessary documents in place prior to 2020, stating that we need in-house suspension within the school compound. There's no way that you will send a child home for 5 days or the minister for 6 days and the child get anything out of that. What do they get from that? What do they get from that?
All right, Mr. Mendoza, I know you probably have a lot to say, but
No. I don't have a lot to say. Not tonight. But what I'm saying, what I'm bringing, I want the minister to know that this conversation should go around the country. It should continue. It should continue. It should continue. I will pass the mic. Right. But I appreciate what you are doing. The policy document is fine. But what I'm saying, and sir, I know you're pressed for time, but one policy that's missing there is school feeding, transportation, And you know, I don't want to go on and on because we just have a few of us here. But it's serious, serious, serious when we talk about school feeding and we talk about transportation. And I will talk about transportation and then I'll give up the mic. School opened Monday, last Monday, right? I took my goodly time and I drove down to San Fernando Wharf to see the children and them catch this bus to go home in the afternoon. They walk from Pleasantville Secondary School to San Fernando every day because transportation do not want to come there because of the traffic to come back in. Every day. Pleasantville has 1,800 students. The junior sec, well, what we call the junior sec, and the senior sec where I am. They walk. 412 students walk to San Fernando because they cannot get transport. That's one. When they reach there, we have other students from various schools around that area who goes to San Fernando Wharf to catch the bus to go home. At 4 p.m., PTSC would make an announcement and state clearly that the 4 p.m. bus will not be leaving this afternoon, the 7 p.m. will be leaving. I felt for those children who stand in that line in this hot sun all hour and a half after walking to reach San Fernando Wharf, and PTSC would make that announcement. Whether they are on go slow for 4%, that shouldn't be the burden for those children who is going to Point Forte, Labre, Princestown, Pinal, Siparia. I'm saying that I have to say that tonight because I watched and it brought tears to my eye to see them walk off with their bag with a little bottle of water and don't know if they'll get a maxi to go home or if they'll reach 8 o'clock, boys and girls. So I'll close at that, Madam Minister, and I think it's something that we need to look at in terms of transportation for our students from various schools, not only San Fernando, but Cedros, the Mayaro area, and the Toko area. They have been calling me, so I said, let me put that in. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mendoza. Minister, you want to have
I
a
just want
final
to say
point?
that transportation issue is something, some out of our control in terms of the Ministry of Education itself, but some of the issues we do have, we depend on PTSC to assist us as well with drivers, concessionaires. In some areas, we have difficulty getting concessionaires, difficulty with them wanting to operate in a certain way, as you mentioned, the traffic going in and so on. So we do have challenges that we have to overcome, even in the provision of the transport to our students. The call for the conversation to continue, I think it's one we could listen to and advise it as much as possible, because it's an important conversation to have. You know, I think it's important for the public to be able to give us feedback in this way as well. Even though we get a lot on our Facebook page and so on, this is a good way to get some feedback as well. You mentioned an issue about the school social workers and about the students, right, the in-house suspension. So what we have is revised the National School Code of Conduct, and we have said to principals and so on, suspension should be your last option, and there are clear guidelines with respect to what should be done before a suspension is arrived at. So the student convinces within the school, then calling in the parents, that's the next stage. You know, then you might want to, if it's a third offense, there's something else before you reach to suspension, because we understand that, you know, the suspension is not the best thing for the student, but when it becomes or reaches to the point where all of the efforts we are making by the school social worker, the guidance counselor, the parents, sometimes the parents come in and say they throw their hands in the air too. So when it reaches to that stage, sometimes the presence of the child is so disruptive to the school environment, we have to resort to that. But it is not as though that is the first option, and we try to encourage our principals and our teachers to not make it the first option, and of course the involvement of school social workers to bring that to fruition. I also want to mention this because I think you spoke about it and someone else as well. In our 26 schools, we have asked for a revised school operation which deals with their literacy and numeracy in forms 1 and 2. We understand that if a student comes into the school not being able to read and write, then they will be frustrated with the usual curriculum. So what we have asked and we are implementing, it's a work in progress, even at this school, which is one of 26. It's a work in progress to address what they are actually learning in forms 1 and 2, to allow them to come up to the standard of what was called the primary school leaving, because that certification, even if they come up with that alone, if they leave in Form 2, it allows them to be able to get the lower level government jobs. So we have done that to give them a fighting chance. So even if they attain the age of 16 and they come out of school, which is the compulsory age, you can't force them beyond that if their parent is not, insisting. At least they have something, a basic level of literacy and numeracy, and a paper in their hand that they can move with. So we are bringing schools onto that system, working with them so that we get to that point, because we understand our present challenge. But of course, through the remedial education sub-policy, we are working on removing that problem from the level of the primary school, because we are in the primary schools that have the biggest problems. We are giving them after-school classes to standards 3, 4, and 5, not just standard 5. Standard 3, 4, and 5. So you're looking at the developmental aspect too. So even before they reach standard 5, we want to get them where they should be. So the after-school tuition, which is free for them, we provide a snack for them so that at least they're in a learning mode. The vacation revision, so we are using all of the available opportunities to assist our students and to engage them more. Because some of them go home, they have no supervision. Nobody is doing anything. So we are using all of the available opportunities to help them as much as possible so that we reduce what Sir spoke about, that when they reach in Form 1, they cannot read or write. We understand, as I said, we are facing the reality of our situation. We're not sugarcoating anything. And we are looking in terms of our strategic areas at how we can deal with the issues that we have in our schools and how we can make it better.
Right, so let me thank the panel very much for your contributions. Dr. Gatsby, the Honorable Minister of Education, the CEO, Dr. Peter Smith, Mr. Aaron Ramratan, Director of School Supervision, Ms. Nurse Carrington, Dr. Nurse Carrington, Director of Student Support Services. Ms. Bagwandin, I apologize, I was not able to bring you into the conversation at all, but thank you for being here, right? Director of ECC. And to you, the audience, let me thank you very much for your participation, although some of you are a bit naughty in between, but that's okay, right? Thank you all very much for your contribution. I think you all did, in fact, add value to what we did this evening.
And allow me to add my thanks as well. Right. I saw all the passion. I appreciate that, and it's part of the process. Thank you very much.
So thank you all very much. You're reminded tomorrow we are in El Dorado West, right, for continuation, and on Thursday we are online at the Ministry of Education's website and the Facebook page, right? So good. Thank you very much, and God bless. Have a safe evening. I turn you over to Ms. Simmons.
Thank you very much for our moderator. So can we ask her, she can have the conversation with the minister immediately after we close. We do have a live broadcast that we do need to close off. So I want to invite the Honorable Lisa Morris-Julian, Minister in the Ministry of Education, to bring the closing remarks and vote of thanks. Minister is always willing to chat with students, and we will do so immediately after.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Madam Minister. I wish to congratulate every one of you who took the time to come out this evening to this particular EdU Talk Community Forum to discuss the Education Policy 2023 to 2027, as well as its sub-policies. Education is indeed everyone's business. As such, the objective was to provide a space for all the stakeholders, parents, teachers, and members of the national population to share ideas, concerns, recommendations on the plans and projects. Many are very new to some of you, while some are simply a reinforcement for others. Some of the plans and projects are already being introduced so we can get your feedback on how to make them better. While some of the plans and projects are a radical change from the norm and will require more effort to implement. Our children, and yes, I say ours, because like the minister, I have children in the school system, as do many of you. They need us to take the actions needed to protect them, to prepare them, and to position them to have the best possible future. We, all of us here, have the collective power to transform the education system, to ensure quality education, to ensure equitable education, to ensure accessible education for our nation's children. The education policy, its 8 pillars, the strategic goals under each pillar, and the sub-policies that give effect to these pillars are the roadmap. But we have to drive this change. I would like to thank the tireless work and efforts of P.S. Kurt Meyer and Simone Williams, our various senior executives, who are always here to support us and to support you, teachers, principals, and in many cases, parents on the front line. They are making the strides needed to support the transformation agenda. And yes, we would love it if all things happen faster, but we will get there. Every day we see improvement. We just need to keep pressing forward. So our moderator, my very good friend, Mr. Alan Ramdeen, SS2 of St. Patrick, thank you for managing the conversation and lending your expertise in getting the best out of the audience. To our EdU Talk panelists, the Honorable Nian Gadsby Dolly, leader, visionary, our lady of great patience, the driver to this transformation, our CEO, Dr. Peter Smith, our DSS, Aaron Ramratan, our Director of ECCE, Ms. Carol Bagwidin, Dr. Aninka, Nurse Carrington, you are a dynamic team, and I'm very blessed to work with each of you every single day. I know the work that it took to get us to this point, and I thank and congratulate you. 2 down, 3 more to go. I'm sure those present here appreciate the opportunity to engage with you and discuss the business of education. And the corporate communications team, led by Rodel Phillips Simmons, you make the magic happen. You work beyond the call of duty, and for that, we, the executive, are indeed grateful. To the volunteers, suppliers, management, principal, and staff of Carapichaima West Secondary School, thank you for your support in making today a success. For those of you who can, the EdU Talk Forum goes to the East, El Dorado West Secondary on Wednesday the 20th. And you can log in for the virtual on Thursday the 21st of September, and on Friday, another historic event, EdU Talk Student Forum, takes place at Naparima College, where we expect 400 secondary school students from across Trinidad to get the opportunity to discuss, make recommendations, and exchange ideas on how the education should impact them. Now, every single day, our Honorable Minister likes to encourage and support and push us forward. But one particular quote stands out. On Saturday, on 95.5, the Honorable Minister was asked, what is education? Her response was, education is preparation for life. I asked her, and she said, Gil is our children, and we have to do our best. I appreciate that, and I appreciate you all. Thank you, and God bless.
This is TTT, Live for Local.